All right, folks, we are going to get started with this third panel discussion of the day, fourth of the day. I'm starting to lose track here. Going green at the movies. To kick things off, I hand the mic to my colleague and friend, Manolo. Manolo.
I'm going to get rid of this temporarily. My beautiful face. Right. Welcome to this panel. Welcome to this panel. My name is Manuel Carmona. I work at the European Union delegation to the US in Washington, D.C. And I wanted to, welcome you for the effort you make at this time of the siesta time. I'm Spanish, so I know what I'm talking about. It's a siesta time, so I thank you very much for being here. I wanted to mention the importance of media creativity. And this is what we're going to discuss in this panel about going green at the movies and the connections with climate change, because there are connections. I read not long ago a book called The Better Angels of Our Nature by Steven Pinker. I don't know if any of you has heard about this book. Anyone? Yeah, I got some colleague there that is raising his hand. Right, this book is about, optimism. It says, the thesis says, violence has gone down over the time. If you look at the miserable lives of people in the Middle Ages, we are much better off now. There's less cruelty around. There's less violence. And the author identifies one of the causes of that is the invention of the printer, for example. The books started to circulate. People started to connect with each other, with emotions, with how other people would feel. How would I feel in their place? So this is the importance of the creative arts, of the creative industries. It makes us connect. It's crucial. Unfortunately, as an industry, as a sector, as an economic area, it also involves, the use of resources, emissions, and this connects with climate change. It brings us today. In this quite a special panel, I would say, because I hear from some of our panelists there have not been many connections between climate and culture, even though we are in South by Southwest in this kind of arena, in this kind of area of work, right? In Europe, we have a program called Creative Europe. This involves support to the culture industry, the media industry. In many respects, there's also a cross-sectoral help for innovation, supporting news media, independent news media, etc. In 2020, there was an action plan published by the European Commission to try to bring more green elements into the production of movies or cultural production in general. And in 2021, last year, we've had some support calls that have been made available. Some money is already flowing in this direction. The next steps, we have a study to improve things, to improve methodologies to measure carbon emissions, for example, of the industry. That is scheduled by the end of this year. So keep an eye on that on your Google. By the end of this year, we'll have a study going on that. That's it from my side. I leave you to the excellent panel. I thank you very much, and I leave you with Hemini, who is going to take it from here. Thank you, Hemini, and a big welcome to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. So, going green at the movies, let's first introduce our panelists. So, John, do you want to go first?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. First, I want to say thank you to the EU Commission for holding this panel. I think it's unique from what we've seen across South by and all the great work they're doing, as well as if everybody's walked down the hallway that goes from inside to outside. It's great to have that experience that reminds us of nature, of water, and the great facts that go on. So I'm John Rigo. I work over at Sony Pictures, charged with helping Sony and the Sony Group meet our zero environmental footprint plan.
Hello, I'm Britta Eric. I work for Creative Europe desk in Hamburg. Thanks, Manuel, for talking about Creative Europe real quick. So we are the audiovisual support scheme. This is the support scheme for the audiovisual industry. And Creative Europe desks are located all around Europe, and we help the people with their applications. We do a lot of networking, so we're like the ambassadors of the program, basically. And I have a question for the audience. How many producers are here from Europe, for example? How many? Okay. And cinemas? No? Okay. Just saying, I'll be here afterwards, so if you have anything to ask about the program, let me know.
Hi, I'm Luca Ferrario. I work in a public film fund in Italy, in Trentino, and I'm here because we developed back in 2016 a certification system for sustainable film production that we start sharing with other institutions, with other regions, with other countries, and we try to find a common approach to push sustainability in the film industry. Thank you.
Thank you. So the great thing is that the panelists are all from different countries, different cultures, so there's a wide variety of answers. And as we know that sustainability, there is no right or wrong. It's a journey, and everybody's journey is completely unique. So that's what I really wanted to emphasize this time, is just to make sure that everything is heard with an open mind, because things are very different in each country. So it's great to get different points of views. So we'll start with the first question, which is a generic high-level question, which is along the lines of on productions, green productions themselves. Britta, what standards do you use? Do you use any certifications? Are you using any carbon calculators to do any of the metrics, etc.?
So, you know, I live in Germany. So in Germany, we just introduced in 2022 the new film funding law. So if you want money from the National Film Board, you have to have the CO2 balance for your film, basically, and you have to also be a green production. And also we have a federal system, so we have many regional film funds. There's one that already is developing a carbon calculator and so on. And we also have the really cool in Hamburg, in the north, the Moin Film Fund. And they were like the first ones, I think 2011 or something, they already started with the green shooting. So they were like early people. So I will talk about that more later. But so this is the German level, but in Europe, we also, of course, have now in the Media Creative Europe program, sustainability is really part of the applications. And so there is one calculator that is developed. It's called Eureka. I don't know if you heard about that. You probably know this. So this is still developed. This is being tested, I think, right now. And we hope we can have that, because we really need a common calculator. Because in Creative Europe, we are really very much about co-production, collaboration, border-crossing productions. And so different countries have different standards, so we really need this one common tool.
Great, thank you. And Lucas, same question to you.
Yeah, of course, we choose the approach of the certification because we saw that talking with producer, if you just propose guidelines, you don't really know what happens. So if you talk about carbon footprint calculators, I see that looks sometimes not enough concrete to them. So we propose this green film. It's called green film certification, and I think it's really straightforward, because you propose to producer a list of actions they can take on set, they can do on set, so they understand what they can do better, they understand how those things could be verified, and at the end of the shooting they can receive an official certification, and this is something they are proud of, and is also very important for other players, for broadcasters, or for institutions, that they can tell that film is certified, this other one is not. And it's something important to know, and that could be also helpful in pushing sustainability. And I think it's also working well as a system, because it involves the whole crew. So it really works in a change of the mindset of the people working on set. This is what we are seeing now.
Great. So unlike Germany, where there's a set standard by a national regulation, in the films that are coming out of Italy, can you tell which one is a green film as opposed to one that isn't? Is there a label or anything attached to it?
Yeah, of course you can. I mean, you can if you're an Italian production, but now not only Italian, because it's working also in other regions, in other countries. You can apply for the certification, and at this moment you also receive a lot of incentives for that. This is what we start doing in 2017, so to link the certification to the public funding. So if you are a producer, you don't have to, because it's too early to ask as a mandatory thing, but you can choose to commit to receive a certification, and you have an extra points, extra money, because this is something that is really helpful in gaining the attention of producers. So, okay, let me see what I can do. So you have their attention, they study, they understand that they can do many things better, and they're willing to try. So it's not a matter of paying them for being sustainable, because it's just small money. It's not that we pay them, but it's something to help them cover some extra costs that you may have in your sustainable filming.
Great.
So at the end, you know which one
is green.
Yes, have it or not.
Exactly. And John, same question to you. What's happening over the pond with our American cousins?
Yes, of course. We have shows that shoot everywhere and originate everywhere. And so the way we look at it is wherever the show is originating is the common set of best practices or standards that we are using. So here in the United States, the Producers Guild of America, along with a number of studios, created the Sustainable Production Alliance that have a set of common tools that we deploy across all of our US originating shows. Over in the UK, BAFTA created Albert. They have their set of standards. And then Italy and Germany, likewise. We were talking about this the other day, and the nice thing about sustainability is we work collectively as an industry, and that's really beneficial for many reasons. But a person smarter than me from Disney mentioned this idea of reciprocity. And just sitting at South by, all of us that occasionally stop by an interactive session, you hear the word interoperability quite a lot, and they mean the same thing. With all these standards, they're more alike than not. So obviously, as industries, there's a lot of conversations going around, and eventually the hope is getting to that interoperability type approach, that we're all intending to do the same thing, measuring the same thing, outcomes through the best practices and checklists that we're going through in pre-production to make sure that we are lowering our impact. And so no matter what standard we use globally, the hope is that they can cross borders and be equally as effective. But at the moment, until that happens, we focus on where our origination is and use that common standard.
Brilliant, thank you. And so, Britta, quick question. Are you, majority of the time, do you use green consultants on sets? Or have you found in some cases that sustainability has become quite mature? Because, as you mentioned, that Germany has been doing this for more than a decade. Has it become mature enough that people are trained to be sustainable as part of their job?
First, I have to say, not Germany has been doing this for a decade, but the regional Northern Film Fund, Moin, has doing it. So they were really early, and the others then followed. Well, the other day, I really heard on another panel that we had during the Berlinale that we meanwhile have like 300 green film consultants in Germany. I thought that was a lot. I don't know if that's really true, but I thought it was a lot. And it's also now more and more film funds offer to like a training, and then they are certified, for example. So I don't think that all film sets already are using green consultants, but as I can say for the northern German region, it's meanwhile really part of the process. So you have to be green to get the funding, which I think is very cool. And it's, for example, it really starts, and this goes through all the value chain, the whole value chain. So it really starts with storytelling, for example. Storytelling is like, how do the writers tell their stories? As in, like, where do people live? Do they move around a lot? Means, company moves for the film shoot. And where, like, what cars do they drive? Can they, drive normal cars? What products do they use? What clothing do they wear? This can all be maybe green and sustainable. I think that's a very cool starting point already from there. And then let alone production. But this is really something that needs to be more, I think, implemented already in the storytelling. So right from the start.
Yeah, you're right. Green storytelling is becoming a rather hot topic, and in some cases a very political topic as well. But I completely agree that we're starting to see it more, and sooner or later it will start becoming normalized, I think. So let's see where it goes. Same question to you, John.
Sure,
Consultants?
I would say it depends. I'll give a couple examples. Who here has seen Spider-Man No Way Home? Any hands? I got 1, 3, 4, 5. So we had a green steward on that show, specifically devoted to that. And in some way, you know, Spider-Man, who I got to show my daughters that film, is the first sort of Marvel film they got to see, which is fantastic. So it emulates sort of multiple periods of my life back from Tobey Maguire. I was a Tobey Maguire fanatic when I was younger. Really loved that. To then, you saw Andrew Garfield in Amazing Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man was that first film that we had, probably not the first film we had a green PA on, but first film that we documented the work of a green PA. And also with the second one, Electro, we actually brought that in to the marketing component of it, and did a very large marketing campaign actually with WWF and Earth Hour. Earth Hour comes up on March 26th. We know it's a moment in time that just allows us to remember our impact on electricity and our usage of it. So I got to talk to my kids also about that component of when we brought climate messaging and environmental messaging really into both the marketing and the stories of our film in a really concerted way. And then obviously this film, which was fantastic and brought those characters together, we had a green PA on it, and if you go to the very last, just before the button, you will see our internal certification that shows that it was a green film and met all of our internal requirements. I'm happy to go into that at a later point in time. But what the green PA does is they start, you know, a few weeks before production. They help all of the heads of departments, help with the training, help set up recycling and compost programs, help the Transpo group secure solar trailers for casts. They help do they reach out to the community. This one did a community grant to plant some trees in the local community to say thank you for allowing us to shoot in their local communities. And they're there through the entire stretch of the show, helping, assisting on, you know, what you typically would see in our green production manual. And then at the end, make sure they're doing the carbon calculator and the checklists and our lumber worksheet around sustainable lumber to make sure that we are being accountable for all of these activities that we set out in the beginning. So not only we're going to say we're doing it, we have documentation that actually shows that we're doing it. And that's what the green PA does. On other shows, we don't use green PAs, we assign somebody. So it depends on the size of the show and the magnitude of the operation.
But since you mentioned solar trailers for the cast, for example, like one strategy, at least in Germany, is, does it always have to be a trailer? Can't it be like a location that is already there, like a fancy hotel room, for example, or something? Does it have to be a trailer? One thing just to think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's true. And it's location, the wonderful thing about film and the challenging thing about film, a lot of it's location dependent. And so you adapt to your location and the capabilities that provides you as a production, right? Same thing with grid tie-ins. Mm-hmm. Really critical, important aspect that helps the sustainability attributes of a production, mm-hmm. but very location dependent.
Mm-hmm. Good. Luca, what about yourselves, consultants
We definitely want to use green consultant because sometimes people like make green shooting looks easy, like let's get rid of plastic bottle and a couple of other things, but it's not that easy, unfortunately. So there is a lot of know-how producers need to have, like what kind of energy you can buy, what kind of regulation about the waste management, what kind of materials you can use for our department or for, I don't know, catering. So there's a lot of things you need to know, and we cannot expect producers to learn all of this. They already have so many things to think about, so we need to have green consultant jumping on board and start working with the producer before the shooting, and before, I mean, not the day before, but weeks or months before, because at some point they need to get together and the producer needs to say, this is my film, this is my plan, what can I do? And a green consultant can help him making the right choices about suppliers or location or other things. And it's not going to be zero impact production, because that's not going to happen, because it's still a product we are making. But if we want to keep making films, we need to take a film and plan sustainability in order to have the most sustainable possible version of that project. And this is something that a consultant can do, and it's maybe in the future a producer will learn step by step how to do this somehow, but at this early stage of the transition, I think they have a key role in doing this.
Yeah, true. So all of you have touched upon it. So we all know that travel and energy are the biggest footprints of productions. They're combined, sometimes they can make up more than 2/3 even of the carbon footprint. So you touched upon some of the stuff around it, but what are you doing anything unique or different around this? Have you started, I don't know, for example, moving through COVID and as part of sustainability to virtual production sets? You mentioned solar panels. Where are you going with these topics? Do you want to go ahead, Tejon, take it first.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm not a film person, right? I'm a sustainability environmentalist at heart. So the reason why I mention that is you asked, so I'm going to take this into the data side of things, which is what we sort of focus on. So you think about a production. Sustainable Production Alliance and the Producers Guild came out with a report, gosh, maybe a year ago. Albert and a bunch of people come out with reports around this. I think if you look at it from a climate perspective, so there's other ways from the environment to look at it, but it's about 46 to I think 56% is fuel, right? That's first and foremost sort of where the footprint comes from. I think the second and third items is travel and then utility, electricity. I think those both account for maybe 20%. So by and large, you're at about 80 or 90% there of your footprint. Now that's on average, right? You have sort of shows like multicam, half-hour scripted shows that I think are a little more stage-driven. That'll be 50% utility. I think you have things like documentaries that are much more on the road, right? So you're going to get 50, 60% on the travel side of things.
Sure.
So it varies by style. If you look at each category, you then figure out how exactly you combat those climate issues. I would say first thing on the unique side, we try not to be unique. As Sony, we try to be unique in the IP, in the storylines, in the technology, and the things that really sort of drive, the appeal to the viewers and the audiences. I think on the sustainability side, we try not to be unique because collective action moves you farther and faster, especially collective action when you're talking about we shoot in a place, not all the time, we're not a manufacturing plant. We're not there 100% of the time. We might be there for 4 months, then we pull out. Other shows go there and we go back a year. So being unique in that space actually ends up hurting us versus having that purchasing power and having that collective voice that these are the types of services and products that we want. So electricity, what do we push? We push renewables, right? We all know that. So that from a utility perspective, about a year ago, we launched what we call our first Sustainable Studio Scorecard, which we own a studio in Culver City in California. We were very transparent with what we're doing around sustainability from the studio, and also asking all other studios to be transparent with what they're doing. It was, we've had a partnership with a number of different companies since then, Albert, BAFTA being one of them, and they're working hard on creating almost like a green building, a LEED, BREEAM in the UK scorecard for studios. Really beneficial because that's our infrastructure, right? That's a big part of that energy use that we talked about. On the fuel use, you have electrification, but you also have electrification knowing where that source of power comes from. So we work hard on things like solar trailers. We work hard on procuring things like renewable diesel where it is actually available. It's available in the UK, it's available in California. It's not available in large quantities elsewhere. So again, it goes back to that philosophy of we need to make sure that we're acting around the capabilities that the location has to service us, but also we work with all of our shows to make sure that even if they've been there, and because people go show to show, so they know their location really well, even if they've been there, they're asking their service provider for that environmental standard. because that communication, that training, that conversation is really critical to make sure that that service shows up tomorrow if it doesn't show up today. So I'll stop there because it's a long answer. But we're working in many different factors from procurement to infrastructure to try to combat exactly what you said early on.
Brilliant. Luca?
Yeah, we also are aware of the weight of these things, energy and transportation. So in the rating system, there are different criteria, and the one about energy consumption is the one with more weight. So we propose to use, to buy energy from renewable sources, or to use LED light, or to connect to the power grid when possible. And there is also one transportation I don't know how it is in English, optimization, sorry, plan. It is one mandatory document you need to prepare before the shooting starts. So we definitely try to work on this.
Great.
Plus, Luca, I mean, you will agree we really have a good functioning train transport system in Europe, which really makes all the difference. For example, like in shooting, you can say, okay, every travel, under 5 hours, you really have to take the train, for example, and not the plane. That's something. And then also when you drive, you can say, like, we use electric cars or whatever cars, and for that we use good energy. And so there are really so many ways. So
in smaller countries, easier than the US, than when there are thousands of kilometers to travel. So yeah,
absolutely. And of course, sustainability, like with our Creative Europe applications, they are really part of the applications now. And the way the applications are evaluated, it works with the point system. So you get 5 points out of 100 for sustainability. So that can really make a difference of being in or out. Yeah, so, and travel is definitely a really big thing. But as I said, with a functioning train system in Europe, we should be
Makes a difference. Absolutely. So we're all working in sustainability here. We're converted. But how have you found sustainability that it's important for commissioners, the financiers, the people that hold the purse strings? And there's still this idea in some cases that being sustainable means being more expensive. So who wants to take that one first?
I can take first, because I also, before I joined Creative Europe Media as a desk, I come from production. So I produced documentaries for a long, long time, and for a longer time before that I was on film sets like from day one after school, so I've known a lot of production. And commissioning editors really need to acknowledge that we need more sustainability, because it is more expensive. Like if you, for example, catering is really one important aspect. Catering, can you do like vegetarian, can you do local, can you do organic, for example, which makes it more expensive, and so on and so on. So if you really go the whole value chain, commissioners, I would say, have to step up for sustainability. Maybe they have already in Europe, I don't know, but this, at least, I'm sure they are aware that this is something that needs to be done.
Luca?
Yeah, since we work also as financier for filming, we decide to, like I said before, to incentivize this and to give a kind of reward. And I think this thing is spreading a lot around Europe, because as you probably know, in Europe there is a big system of public funding to the film industry at regional level, national level, European level. So if these institutions start pushing this kind of policy, you can really see the effects, you can really speed up things. And this is what we are trying to make, because it's important you set policies as a financier, like in many other fields. You start where the money starts from, things get faster, and we have an issue on timing on this topic. So we need to find solution to make it faster, and this is one of those.
From our perspective, we have a commitment to having zero environmental footprint. So it starts from that point. Like anything you do, Sometimes it's more expensive, sometimes it's less expensive, sometimes it's neutral, right? So our shows all have vegetarian options. That's not more expensive or less expensive, it's just what we ask for. Protein, animal protein is expensive, right? So it doesn't necessarily add to the budget. You obviously have, the old classics of, say, water bottles. You know, buy water bottles, but you buy central stations, right? That's not more expensive. You work on better logistics with people going in large vans instead of smaller SUVs, right? That also goes back to less expensive. The next generation of that is around the electric cars. There's two parts to the electric car, right? It's the car, can you get electric, and is the infrastructure in place that allows you to do that? We all know what's happening to fuel prices right now. Depending on the full cost of it, not necessarily more expensive. The availability is the challenging part of it again. The electric vehicle plus the infrastructure, that's the challenging part of that. But we have a commitment to doing this, which is why we measure everything, which is why we use the standards that we discussed earlier to make sure that we are making progress and identifying those areas that are critical to the environmental impact that we to focus on those. We have 8-9 years ago, we have a good story around sustainable lumber and how we transformed basically the supply chain for sustainable lumber for our industry as an example of expensive early on, cost neutral after you got over that little hump, and it's been that way since.
It's true, actually. So with sustainability, there's a lot that can happen from the roots, bottom up. But actually, in order to have any real sustainable strength on sustainability itself, there has to be a top-down commitment, I think, as well. So
you need to meet halfway.
Yeah, and eventually they'll meet.
This is what happened because we started proposing this approach, and we were expecting, like, I don't know, 10%, 20% of production applying, requesting certification, but it was immediately 50%. Meaning that producers were ready for this. They just didn't know how to manage it, probably.
Yeah.
And now, after a few years, now we receive 100% of the application containing the request for the certification. And a good thing we are seeing is that once they try to change their habits, their mindset in this, they don't go back, even though they don't have incentive anymore. Because it's like what we do, like in our apartment, we got used to split, glass and paper and plastics. And maybe you do this for 1 year, and then if somebody comes and says, okay, no worries, doesn't matter anymore. You put everything in this bag here. You don't want to do that. You know it's wrong. Even if it would be easier, you don't go back to this. And we are seeing this to producers.
Brilliant.
And this is very encouraging, I would say.
Yeah. So talking about from one group of people in production to another, which is the talent. So we've seen, most of us know certain celebrities that are very well known for sustainability and are talking about sustainability, push the sustainability agenda. But I'm sure there are many others that we know of that are from the old school, the idea where you hear about so-and-so flying their favorite foods halfway across the world, or their chef halfway across the world, etc. Any changes? Everybody started seeing the talent? Is that on board?
The change that I have seen is that it's at least discussed more. There was also at the Berlinale one green film panel saying, and there was this one actor we have in Germany, he also kind of lives in America halfway, I don't know. And he had a little speech saying, okay, people, do you really have to be driven, like for the red carpet, like 50 feet from across the street? Is this really necessary? And everyone's like, that might be a point. But then again, do you want to walk in heels? So I think what really needs to happen is we need to have the agents on board, definitely, the talent agents that really set, if necessary, set their clients straight. And also what you say, we never forget, in the mid-90s, we were on a film shoot somewhere in the middle of Scotland, in the middle of nowhere in Scotland, And there was this older actress saying, "I'd really like a melon, please." And we're like, "We're so sorry, ma'am. I mean, this is a tiny village in the middle of nowhere. You buy the flowers in the butcher shop. I don't think they have a melon here, wherever." So it was really a big deal, I remember. And then there was phone calls, "Can we get her a melon?" And somebody at some point said, "No, it's not going to happen, sorry, lady." And the film was finished anyway. Rule number 1, every film gets finished. So.
I haven't seen many differences actually in our talent behavior so far, and I saw a much better response from technicians, from the crew member, honestly, and I was expecting more support on this topic by talents because they have this huge, power in communication, but I haven't seen it so far. Not enough, at least.
Not enough.
No, not enough.
Good.
I haven't seen any pushback from anything that we've done. So I'll say that as the first thing. I've only seen supportive comments and appreciation. The only thing I've seen pushback for is, are you going far enough? Or have you thought about offering vegan meals instead of just vegetarian meals at the set? Are we doing enough around electrification? And as we're talking about electric cars, we see electric cars everywhere, but can we get more on set? So I've had that type of commentary come to me, but nothing that's inhibited the work that we do on set.
Okay, great. And so we all know that sustainability is a really important topic, but it's also a chance for a lot of people to get onto the bandwagon now. So, how do you separate real, accountable, responsible sustainability versus greenwashing? Any cases around there from anyone?
I mean, we choose the certification in order to avoid greenwashing because, like I said, if you just propose guidelines, you don't really know. I mean, you have the producers talking about what they did, but do they really are aware of the real sustainable production, what it is? And so if you work with a certification, it means there is a verification by a third party. And this is something you can rely on because it's their credibility, it's their job to be the verifying body for sustainability certification. So I think it's a safe way to have a proof of a better behavior of the producer. And this is also very important because, like I said, if you want to give incentive, public money on this, you need to have a proof. And the only proof we can have is a certification in our case. So
you have an unbiased, basically an unbiased auditor that cannot be arm twisted.
yeah.
Great.
And it goes back to transparency, disclosure, accountability. I mean, those themes that strong organizations, strong productions sort of stand behind in many ways. So on our side, from a large corporation perspective, we're based on that. We set out our plan. Annually, we disclose how we're doing towards that plan to our stakeholders, NGO stakeholders being a key component of that, investors being another key component of that. And again, making sure that we're being transparent. On individual productions, there's a group in the US called the Environmental Media Association that has that certification for green production. And we use our checklists that the SPA Environmental Media Association created together to make sure that they are providing that validation as well.
Yeah, as I said, like in our national film board, you have to have the CO2 balance. In our regional film fund in the north, I think they also check on you, and what they came up with in 2011 was it's called the green shooting cards for productions. So they, it was kind of like sought after. People wanted to be green then, and that they would come to set and to check really, do all the people do that? And now, since it's a funding regulation, I think they also check upon like when you do your final report or something. So what we do in Europe, as I said, like you have to, in the application, you have to talk about sustainability, but of course nobody will come and check in your office if you really use recycled paper, for example, you know. But I think the idea for now in that is just to make you think, what can you do? And, you know, and the incentive are points, and so I think that's a good system for now.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I want to open the floor up to you guys to ask questions. Please feel free. Just before you do ask your question, can you just also let us know your name and which organization that you come from before you ask the question? So I think people will come around with mics. And I'm sorry, but I can't see very well because the lights.
There's one guy in the first row here.
Hello, my name is Sandra. I'm Chief Sustainability Officer at a U.S. restaurant chain called Just Salad. We serve meals in reusable bowls. We eco-label our products, excuse me. And so interested in what you're saying. But from a storytelling standpoint, I'm very curious. Movies have such cultural power, and I'm curious what your perspective is on when I will see a film where sustainability is part of the backdrop of the life of the characters. When am I going to see a character who walks past a composting bin? When am I going to see a character whose best friend only shops at thrift stores? When am I going to see a character who works at a company that is clearly sustainable in some way? Is there any drive by the studios to incorporate this background storytelling into the film? And, you know, I'm not asking for Sarah Jessica Parker in Sex and the City to be an eco advocate but I'm asking for some kind of background noise in the film that is moving the culture, at least subliminally. So any thoughts on that, and anything we can do as businesses and chief sustainability officers to help you do that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You have the
Yeah,
studio.
I figured I was taking that.
You were the
Just
studio.
wanted to check. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, that's a great question.
It's a great question. Yeah. On the restaurant side, commend you for using reusables and everything. We're just transitioning to on our studio lot to part of our zero waste program, our eliminate single-use plastics program, to reusables and all compostables. It's a challenging thing to do. So commend you on that. If you look at some shows, it does exist out there. Atypical, we have a couple episodes that they would have composting there and people would compost. Lots of shows now, which you didn't see before, would have people with reusables, right? We talk more and more about how do we make sure that we are incorporating the behaviors of tomorrow, not the behaviors of yesterday. Now, that being said, you got to make sure that the piece is appropriate for that, right? It's got to be a current day piece or a future piece. If we're shooting a piece back in the 1980s, it might be a little bit different. It should be set during what the expectations are back then. Electric vehicles is another good example. Spider-Man No Way Home had an electric car in there as just a regular car, right? Which is what it should be. It shouldn't have to be, and you've seen electric cars pop up quite a bit, but it shouldn't be the wealthy magnate with their electric car, right? The electric car should be something that is universally acceptable and available to all, and that's what we want to make it. On the backdrop and the story characters, I am not a creative person. What we do is talk about those behaviors tomorrow. I think if you look back, you will find characters like what you've said, but it really is determined by the creator of trying to understand who is the identity of this person, right? Not all identities will be driven or will be defined by a person that is, an environmentalist at heart, right? But it will show up in subtle ways if it doesn't define the character. You do have some things that define the character. Look at some of Ed Begley stuff. Look at some of Woody Harrelson stuff, and you'll find both subtles and explicit sort of examples of that. But it's got to be narrator driven. It's got to be part of the importance of that character and defining that character.
If I can say something, I think it would be very important to do something like that, but it's also very important to keep things separated, because one thing is how a film is produced, so it's a matter of changing how an industry works, and another one, and this is what we are trying to do, and another one is to talk about the contents, because this is an artistic point of view, and it's in charge to writers, directors, and you don't want to mix those things, because sometimes, for instance, some people told me, why don't you give more points in your evaluation, more incentive to films about environmental issues? Because it doesn't mean it's a good film. I mean, it's not enough to say we are talking about environmental issues.
Yeah.
It has to be so we need to keep very, very separated, I think. But still, we need some line of work on this topic as well.
Yeah, and also we're talking about behaviors, right? I don't want someone to think they need to be an environmentalist to do the environmental thing, right? Your backstory doesn't have to be grown up traditional, right? Grown up on a farm with compost outside and you grow all your vegetables in order for you to be an environmentalist. You want both the heroine and the asshole to all be part of the overall problem that we're trying to combat. And so it needs to be integrated in those diverse set of characters.
Which brings me to the question, what is the Batmobile run on? I mean, Warner was here at South by. I should have asked them, totally. They're gone now, I think. So anyway. Yeah, as I said earlier, regarding to your question, it really starts a lot in the storytelling. And we do that on a regional and national level. Definitely, it's more and more, as in like, what do people wear? What products do they use? Do they have to eat meat? Do they have to go to steakhouse? Or can they go to the salad bar, for example? And so on, just the little things that you might also be expecting in film. I think that it's a lot that can be done and will be done also in the storytelling already. So, but as you said, it's not Sarah Jessica Parker, maybe? Creating a trend, let's go thrifting, who knows, you know, it's all open, I would say.
Great, thank you so much for that question. We had someone at the front, and then the gentleman. Thank you.
Hi, Tommy, I'm MD at Immersive. We're a creative studio in London. I'm really interested to hear what you do to potentially help solving the infrastructure problem, right? So as an industry, the film industry has power and lobbying power to make a change. Do you know of any incentive for your studios or potentially producers to actually trying to make local change where you go and do the shooting? So let's say you go into an area, there's not the recyclable energy or renewable energy that exists. Would you do anything to change that, or at least try?
As I said, like in Germany, or in Europe at least, yeah, Europe, I don't know, but in Germany at least, the film funds really try to get the producers to do all that, and to have the incentive is no greening, no funding. That's the incentives, basically. On, you know, the levels differ from state to state in Germany, but that's basically
this is something
that
is going on to support more sustainable production as a fund. And also, I don't know, in Italy now, Cinecittà, which is the big studios in Italy, they want to give discount to certified sustainable production, for instance. So it's another way to support them. And I'm not sure, is this your question?
I was thinking more about the lobbying power for actually changing the local communities where the film industry is going, i.e. the cities you go to or the places where your studios are based.
Not much from that point of view, I would say. We are trying to, so it's complicated in English to reply this question. Let's say if you push, as an institution, if you push sustainable production, at the same time, the city, the contest changes because they want to supply what is needed for a sustainable production. So we try to create the demand for a sustainable chain. And the more you push the demand, the more the offer show up.
Mm-hmm. John?
I would say a couple things. One is sort of, we talk about studios, right? Studios are a big part of it. You know, you look at some of the consortiums we're part of, Albert being one of them. They work with the energy company, I think it's Good Energy over there, to really quickly enable people to access that renewable power that exists and switch them over. On our side, we ask our studios what are their sustainable criteria as we're going through that procurement process, right? So it's becoming more integrated in the procurement process because electrification, because renewable electricity matters. It's something we all need to transfer to, but it also is something that our productions need in order to be really successful as the equipment is becoming more, as you're getting more electric vehicles, but also more electric equipment, right? Which is what we're sourcing on the other end. So we are talking to them, we are putting as part of our procurement practicing and requesting that. Generally, yes. I mean, on the other side, you know, in California, you have electric, you know, legislation that we're okay with. We have our capital planning to move in that direction anyway, and supportive of moving our industry towards, again, electrification, which enables renewable electricity, which moves us away from that fuel-based source, which we talked about earlier on, which is the largest part of our emission.
I think one other thing that comes to mind is the right to repair. Like if you're a cinema and you need a spare part, for example, and many times these spare parts are not available anymore, so they have to buy new equipment. So the right to repair is also something that hopefully the industry in the future will look at, to be honest.
The procurement side is becoming more and more important as organizations start to look at the sustainability strategy. So you start, I know a lot of organizations, what they do is they say, look, we're not going to put a hard stop on this, but just to let you know, we're moving towards this. And here's our procurement requirements. And so just to let you know, we'll be relaxed on the sustainability side this year, but next year or the next procurement that comes around, this is going to become really important. And if you don't fulfill that criteria, then we're not going to buy from you. And so the idea is that you easily and slowly move people towards this journey, saying it's going to become important, it's something that you should start looking at, but giving them enough time, especially when you're looking at suppliers which are smaller, for example. And then I think also on the cities side, there's a lot of big cities in Europe that have the grid for renewable energy, London, Paris, for example. But then the other side is just to make sure that you're not creating those hubs again, and everything else outside of London, outside of Paris, is going to suffer because of it. So there's a fine balance, I think, also to take people along on that journey. So, but yeah, no, it's a great question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I see someone at the back there.
Yes, thanks very much for a great panel, and thanks for your thoughtful approach as you approach production. I'm Oren Bambrick, I'm Senior Director of Partnerships with SustainLife. We're a sustainability management software. My question to you, just to build on your point of procurement, and also to talk about smaller suppliers, how are you helping your suppliers as you look at procurement to be able to give you the information you need? Like, are you collecting emissions data from them, and how are you vetting them as you bring them on with that sustainable mindset?
What suppliers do you mean? I'm not sure if I know.
Oh, sorry, as in, like, you know, your caterers, like I'll look at your value chain, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we go out with typically what you would do for, you know, the services that you're requesting, right? So if you're talking about into the depths of multi-tiered supply chains, and if you are, we can talk about that a little bit. But what you do is you're going out with the services that you're requesting from these local providers in a specific area, and choosing the ones that can meet that need. So caterers, yes, you know, there's service, quality, materials, length of especially out of production, the length of time that you need them to be there. And that includes the sustainability aspects of that, inside that quality of that food, right? Which would be the vegetarian, the local options, same thing with a waste vendor, recycling, compost capabilities. So within the small scale local providers, you're looking at a traditional service judgment and criteria.
Yeah, I think so too. And if you, for example, if you're a costume designer, then if you're on a green production, you obviously, try to buy as little as possible. And so you commit to the whole thing as well. So I think if you're a producer, you just ask what you need from the people. So I don't think mission statements are really in order. What do you do?
Yeah, there are different research projects, different data around Europe, and there's a bit of confusion. So and there is this study group going on trying to figuring out a common carbon footprint calculators. But what we are doing now, because we want to have some specific data from this kind of activities, we are running a research project. It's called Green Film Research Lab, and we are sending people on set, measuring all the activity listed in the rating system, like how much energy a crew is consuming, how much waste is producing, and these kind of things. But it's going to take probably 1 year because it's a long research. And at the end of the day, we will be able to say for each action what the impact on the environmental impact will be for that action, for that number of people and shooting days, and at the same time, what kind of economic impact that action will have to producers. So it's something we are trying to do right now, and I'm really looking forward to the results.
Yeah. And if I can also answer that, so sustainable lumber is something we worked on early when I joined. The production industry is dependent upon and very lucky to have a lot of great local service providers that are in the community and that know how to service productions, which is unique. If you need something at 2 a.m., they expect you to show up at 2 a.m. with exactly what they want. And if you don't, then they'll find someone else that will. So you're dealing with a large set of local vendors and providers. Bringing something like sustainable lumber to them 8 years ago wasn't the language that they necessarily understood, right? Nor did they necessarily understood your typical traceability aspects of a supply chain, right? So we do the research around the traceability of the supply chain, understand your traditional risks of a supply chain, but also what is the pathway for sustainable lumber. So you then first have to know the different components. You then have to do an educational sessions with all of those different components, right? Across any geography that you're then working within. And then you have to show purchasing power that you're going to provide this new SKU or buy this new SKU if they stock it. And then you have to have a commitment to paying, that's why I talked about that hump earlier, that small premium on that SKU until you can make that new pathway efficient to get to cost neutral. That example is pretty true, is more true than not across all different categories of product that you're purchasing from a production standpoint. And so therefore, what you want to do is understand what your impacts are and focus on those core items and make change in that area with the knowledge that the change everywhere across small providers is going to slowly move as this sustainability movement becomes more the norm across all locations, across all municipalities. And that's the approach that we take with suppliers, both on the direct first-tier suppliers, but also how we decide when to go deep and when not to.
Great.
Yeah, I forgot to say that the research I was talking about is based on the life cycle assessment approach, and everything is explained on the website, which is green.film, where you can find all the information explained way better than I'm doing today. So.
It's perfect. Don't
I
worry.
was going to say, I really miss being on Zoom and posting links in the chat all the time. We have so many interesting websites. It's like, okay, how do I get them to the people?
So thank you all very much. We have reached the end of our time. Just want to say that we and the panelists, we will all be around a little bit after. So if you do have any burning questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, you can ask us as you see us. And we'd just like to thank all of you and thank the EU House for hosting us here. Thank you.
A round of applause for
Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining us. We've got another panel starting in 30 minutes on art and whether or not it can actually change the world. We've then got trivia with a European theme taking place outside in the beer garden at 5 p.m. Come and join for that if you feel like you might win or just